Here are 7 original slow-burn horror stories. Quiet, atmospheric tales for the night. First up, The House That Remembers. The rain came first, steady, endless, soft enough to sound like breathing. Margaret parked at the gate and stared at the house she'd bought too cheaply, paint peeled from the gables. Windows stared back, dark and wet. She carried her suitcase up the path. Every board on the porch flexed beneath her. When she fit the brass key into the lock, the door opened before she turned it, and a faint smell of roses gone sour. Dust covered everything. The air felt thick, like the house had been holding its breath. She said hello to the empty rooms, just to hear a voice. Nothing answered, only a distant creak from upstairs. She made tea on the old stove, while rain blurred the windows. Halfway through her first sip, she heard footsteps overhead. Slow, careful, childlike. She called out. No reply. When she took the flashlight up, the hallway was empty. Small prints marked the dust, leading to a bedroom, fading at the door. She closed it tight. The handle trembled once, as if touched from the other side. Morning smelled of metal and damp wood. Margaret drew the curtains, letting grey light reveal a row of photographs on the mantel. A family of 4, the Hartleys. A mother with pinned-up hair, a father behind her, 2 children with blurred smiles. The glass over one photo was cracked across the mother's face. When Margaret brushed it, warmth pulsed beneath her fingers. She stepped back and listened. Between ticks, she could almost hear breathing. The second night, the house spoke differently. The lamp dimmed, the wallpaper rippled when no breeze existed. At midnight, she heard whispering at her door. The words were shapes more than speech, but one was clear. Welcome. She lay still until the whisper faded to rain. In the morning, a child's marble rested on her pillow, blue glass veined with gold. When she looked again, it was gone. On the 3rd evening, the power failed. Only the television in the parlor glowed, though she'd never plugged it in. Static writhed across the screen. A woman's voice emerged, calm and close. We weren't ready to leave. Margaret froze. Figures formed in the static, 4 silhouettes in a family pose. Then her own outline flickered among them. She yanked the cord. The image lingered, then dimmed to black. She scrubbed floors all day to forget it. But when she wiped dust from the parlor piano, a single key pressed down, then another, a slow lullaby, uncertain and clumsy, as if someone small were remembering. Conned, she backed away. The tune stopped, one last note hanging longer than it should. That night the perfume returned, thick enough to sting her eyes. The door eased open by itself. Depressions formed on the bedspread beside her, soft, settling shapes. Please, she breathed, I don't belong here. The house seemed to listen. Something cool touched her cheek, almost kind. Dreams followed, a girl's laughter, dinner for 5, gaslight fading, while someone sang her name. At 3 a.m., steps crossed the floor above and stopped at her door. The handle turned. It opened halfway. 4 dim figures stood there, outlines shifting like smoke underwater. The mother spoke softly. You came back like we hoped. Margaret shook her head. Perfume and warmth swirled around her. The father's voice joined hers. The house remembers everyone it loves. Now it remembers you. The walls expanded gently with each tick. Her dizziness deepened. Balance slipped. She tried to move, but the floor rose softly against her knees. The figures steadied her with cool hands, guiding her down. The rain matched her heartbeat until it wasn't hers anymore. Voices surrounded her, calm, overlapping, humming the lullaby. Each breath she took sounded through the walls. She exhaled once, and the house drew it in. Morning came gentle, almost bright. The storm had passed. Dust was gone. Windows stood clear. In the parlor, 5 photographs graced the mantel, the Hartleys, and 1 new portrait. Margaret's eyes shared their calm. Her head turned slightly toward the doorway. Night settled again. Faint lights drifted from room to room, and the house hummed quietly through its walls, the sound of breathing that matched the rain. The Watcher in the Walls. At first it was harmless things gone missing. An old mug, a towel, a single sock. Leah barely noticed. Her apartment overlooked a narrow alley where ivy climbed the bricks. She liked how the rain muffled sound. The quiet felt safe. Until the evening she came home to the smell of coffee. The pot sat warm on the stove. Steam rose from a mug, her mug. She turned off the burner and walked through each room with slow, careful steps. Nothing seemed touched, yet every shadow looked a little rearranged. The closet door stood open wider than she remembered. The next day she called the police. They listened politely, wrote nothing down, and told her it was probably memory or fatigue. That night she moved a chair under the front door knob and left every light on at 3 a.m. Her phone chimed. A message, no sender. The picture showed her apartment from outside, the window glowing, her silhouette asleep on the couch. Her thumb brushed the screen. The image vanished. Leah told herself she was being dramatic. Still, she noticed more changes. Shoes pointing the wrong direction, candle shorter than before, an unfamiliar scent of citrus, clean, masculine. Silence followed, heavy and exact. Then 3 quiet knocks inside the bedroom wall. Tap, tap, tap. When she answered with her knuckles, the same rhythm came back. She stopped breathing until it ended. On the 5th night, she heard scraping above the ceiling. The hallway light flickered once. Downstairs, a dog barked until the air stilled again. Maintenance came the next morning. The superintendent climbed halfway into the crawl space, paused, and muttered, "Just insulation." He backed out too quickly. "You keep this shut," he said, and hurried away. When Leah leaned on the closet wall later, the drywall felt faintly warm. She tried to keep her mind occupied. Music, phone calls, cleaning until dawn. But each time she returned home, something subtle had shifted. A picture frame angled different, her blanket folded wrong. One morning a trail of wet footprints curved across the kitchen tile and stopped at the couch. She scrubbed until only darker stains remained. When the landlord phoned about dragging noises from her apartment at night, Leah said she'd been asleep. That night she left her phone recording on the counter. By daylight she played it back. For 2 hours, silence. Then, near 2 a.m., footsteps, furniture sliding, a slow breath close to the microphone. A man's whisper followed, quiet and tired. "Why did you seal the window?" She didn't call the police again. They'd only listen, look around, and leave her here. Leah started sleeping fully dressed, keys under her pillow. She unplugged the television, kept the faucet dripping so she'd know if the noise stopped. From inside the wall came a long, thin sound, halfway between breathing and speech. Her name slid through the plaster like water. She pressed her palm to the wallpaper. The breath behind it matched hers. When she whispered, "Please," the voice answered, "Already here." Weeks blurred. Neighbors began avoiding eye contact in the hall. Her mail arrived torn open and resealed. In the steel reflection she caught someone standing behind her, tall, hooded, still. When she turned, only empty air and the echo of rain. Later she found black tape over her floor's elevator button. Underneath, written in small letters, "You shouldn't have looked." Sleep brought no safety. When she finally drifted under, she woke facing the wall. Words were carved into the paint an inch from her face. "Stay still, I am inside." The air vent above her head whispered open. A pale finger slid slowly through the grate, then another, and another, and another. They pressed against the air, feeling for her. She could only watch, unable to move or scream. When the fingers withdrew, they left the metal bent inward, as if memorizing the shape of her room. Morning was too bright. Condensation blurred the glass, underneath which new handprints clustered, small and precise. She folded a few clothes into a suitcase and headed for the door. Another suitcase already waited outside, identical, her own name tag looped to the handle. She dropped everything and ran down the stairwell. Across the alley the windows reflected her movements. but in one pane her reflection still stood, watching the door she'd just fled through. She kept running until the streetlights turned to shapes in the rain. Months later, a different tenant moved in, a quiet woman who liked the sound of rain on glass. The rooms looked cleaner. Fresh paint covered the closet wall. That first evening, she brewed coffee and opened her suitcase to unpack. Not hers. Someone else's clothes lay folded neatly inside. She smiled, thinking the landlord must have mixed things up. Behind the headboard, faint words traced in the paint caught the lamplight. "You can breathe now." She listened for a long moment before unpacking again. The walls exhaled softly, matching her heartbeat. The Hitchhiker. Rain blurred the road into silver threads of light. Daniel had been driving alone for hours when the beams caught a figure walking the shoulder, hand raised, a backpack dark with water. He slowed. The man leaned to the open window. His jacket dripped onto the doorframe. His breath fogged the air between them. "Appreciate the ride," he said. Calm voice. Too calm. Daniel unlocked the door anyway. "Been worse nights," the man replied. He kept his eyes on the windshield, both hands resting on an old canvas bag. The dashboard light caught his face. Mid-30s, pale, jaw unshaven. The smell of rust and damp fabric filled the car. They drove in silence until the radio broke through the static. Breaking news from state police. A murder suspect escaped custody tonight, believed to be hitchhiking along Route 19. Daniel's pulse kicked. He's described as Caucasian, mid-30s, thin build, wearing a green army jacket and carrying a small canvas bag. Drivers are asked not to pick up strangers. Daniel looked at the man beside him, the jacket, the bag, every word matching. The radio hissed. He reached forward and switched it off. Oh, only the wipers moved now. Daniel felt sweat cooling on his palms. "Radio loves scaring people," the hitchhiker said. "Yeah," Daniel answered, "always something." He watched the speedometer climb, the needle trembling at 70. Cold air pressed around them. The temperature had dropped with the lights of the last town. His jaw ached from holding still. The man flexed his left hand, the one closest to Daniel. 3 black rings were tattooed between thumb and forefinger, circles of thorns. Daniel's stomach knotted. He turned the heater knob just to do anything with his hand. "Where you headed?" he asked. "Home." The word came quiet, almost kind. "Haven't been back in a while." He smiled and looked Daniel straight in the eye. The highway sign said next service is 20 miles. "Need gas soon," Daniel said, voice dry. "There's a motel before that," the passenger murmured. "Pine Hollow. Open all night." Daniel nodded, though he'd never seen that sign before on this route. The air inside smelled metallic, like pennies and wet steel. Each heartbeat throbbed behind his teeth. Without anyone touching the knob, the radio came alive again. Suspect still at large, believed to be armed with a knife, taken from one of the victims, considered extremely dangerous. Daniel turned it off, again. The same metallic quiet hung between them. From the passenger seat came a soft laugh. "Guess nobody's perfect," the man said. The sign appeared out of fog, exactly where he'd said. Pine Hollow Motel, its neon vacancy flickering white. 2 wooden buildings faced each other across a gravel lot, not one room lit. Daniel shut off the engine. Steam rose from the hood, mixing with the drizzle. "I'll get a room," the man said. He took the canvas bag and stepped into the rain. The office door opened before he reached it. Inside light flashed once, then died. 5 minutes. 10. Daniel's hands had gone numb on the wheel. Far down the row, a door eased open. Number 7. He told himself to drive away. Instead, he got out. The air bit through his shirt, icy and metallic on his tongue. Each step splashed shallow water. The door to room 7 hung slightly wide. Inside, the light buzzed. The man's jacket lay across a chair. The canvas bag sat open on the bed. The air smelled like damp fabric and something sour underneath. "Hello?" No reply. Behind the closed bathroom door, water ran steadily. Daniel's heartbeat pounded in his ears. He touched the door. The water stopped. Silence stretched. He turned the handle halfway. Nothing behind the curtain. No one. But the mirror over the sink was fogged, as if someone had just exhaled on it. In the mist, words had formed, 2 fingerprints wide. "Turn around." Daniel froze. The door to the main room creaked again. When he looked back, the man was standing by the bed, calm, empty-handed. "You took a wrong road tonight," he said softly. "Listen," Daniel began, but his throat went dry. The taste of metal filled his mouth. The hitchhiker tilted his head, studying him with faint interest. "Funny thing," he said, "they always describe someone every time the radio comes on. Sometimes it's me, sometimes it's the driver." Outside, another radio crackled alive, an echo from the office speaker. "Update on the Highway 19 killer. Police have identified the suspect as Daniel Reed, age 34. He was last seen leaving the scene of a double homicide at the Pine Hollow Motel." Daniel stood very still. The sound of rain faded behind the pounding in his ears. "You remember now," the stranger said. "That's why you stopped for me." The man's smile was almost gentle. "Let's finish the drive." Morning rain revealed only a single car in the lot, its headlights still glowing. Room 7 was empty. Beds made, floor wet with footprints leading out to the highway. Inside the car, 2 suitcases sat on the back seat. The driver's license on the console read Daniel Reed. The passenger seat was dry. On the highway, travelers still pick up a man in an army jacket carrying a small bag. He thanks them in that same calm voice, and somewhere between the stations, the radio cuts through the noise again, describing the man behind the wheel. The Night Clerk. Nate preferred the late shift. No questions, few guests, just the hum of soda machines and the dull flicker of the vacancy sign leaking blue through the lobby glass. The Hollow Rest Motel hid 20 miles off 19, surrounded by evergreens and fog. After midnight it felt totally removed from the world. He poured burnt coffee, checked the guest ledger, then watched the security feed. 4 cameras, only 3 worked. The 4th, facing the wing that ended at room 13, showed nothing but static. Management always said there was no room 13, but down that corridor, between 12 and 14, a green door still stood. At 12:27 a.m., the service bell rang, one sudden note that made his skin jump. A man came in from the storm. Water streaked his coat. His eyes looked flat in the cold light. Nate said, "Rough night out." The man nodded once. "Need a room?" 13, he said. Nate hesitated. "We skip 13, sir. Maintenance storage." The man placed a small roll of worn bills on the desk. "Check again." Nate glanced at the keyboard. No tag, no key, but the empty hook was swaying. He turned back. The man was already walking down the hall toward the dark end of the building. He hadn't taken anything from the counter. The air shifted cooler. Nate replayed the bell sound in his mind, wondering if he dreamed it. Still, water prints darkened the tile, leading to the corridor. 3, 4 steps, then gone. He looked at the monitors. Camera 1, parking lot, empty. Camera 2, hallway by room 11. Camera 3, stairs. Camera 4, static. But for a second, through the noise, a blur crossed the screen. A man's outline, looking straight into the lens before fading out. The sound made his coffee tremble in its cup. The phone rang. He grabbed it fast. A slow voice whispered through crackle. "Guest in 13 needs heat rings." Nate's throat tightened. "Who is this?" "You're the only clerk," the voice said, and hung up. He stared at the receiver, pulse hammering behind his ears. The lobby felt smaller now, as if the walls had inched closer. The next 20 minutes passed in shallow breaths. At 1 a.m., footsteps moved along the hall, wet shoes over tile. Nate rose, every nerve awake. When he checked the corridor, water trailed only halfway before drying. A light blinked at the far end where 13 should be. He walked a few steps closer. The air smelled of iron and mildew. He stopped when something brushed his arm, cold air sliding out from under the sealed door. Back in the lobby, he tried the phone again. Dead. All 4 monitors had gone to snow. The static pulsed as though responding to his heartbeat. He whispered, "Stop it." The bell rang again. He turned, expecting the empty doorway. This time the register book lay open. Fresh ink blid on the final line. Room 13, checked in. The vent above him rattled. The air smelled sharp, like metal scraped clean. He lifted his jacket from the hook and slipped the flashlight from the drawer. The hallway waited in a wash of yellow bulbs, every few flickering out as he passed. Between 12 and 14, the paint looked darker, blistered as if heat had blown beneath it. He traced the seam where a door once sat. When his hand brushed the wall, the flashlight died. The smell of wet dust thickened. Then a hinge creaked softly behind the plaster, and a door he'd just convinced himself wasn't real swung open slowly. Light spilled from a lamp inside, thin yellow, unsteady. The man sat in a chair by the window, coat hung neatly behind him. "You found it," he said. His voice was clear but too calm. "You said no one stays here." Nate's mouth felt dry. "Sir, this room isn't on record." The stranger smiled, head tilted. "That's why I pay in cash." He stood and gestured toward the desk on the nightstand, a rotary phone identical to the one in the lobby. "I ring when the heat fails. You always answer." Nate heard his own name whispered through the vent above, a chorus of dust-choked voices repeating it slowly, fondly. He backed toward the door. The man's face never changed, only his eyes followed. "You keep trying to close this place," he said softly. "But the register needs a name every night. Tonight it's yours." Something under the carpet moved, slow pressure pushing upward. The temperature dropped hard enough that condensation bloomed on the wallpaper. Nate's flashlight blinked once before dying entirely. He felt a whisper directly at his ear. Back to the desk now. When he looked again, the room was empty. Only the lamp remained lit, its shade tilted, humming like the motel sign outside. He ran. At the front desk, the monitors were clear again. Camera 4 showed the hall he'd just left. Still, empty, fluorescent light steady. Then, behind his reflected image, a figure stepped out of the door to room 13, motionless but facing the camera. Nate turned around, nothing there. On the screen, the figure lifted its hand and waved once. Darkness swallowed the motel. Morning wind and dripping gutter. When the manager unlocked the lobby at dawn, the only sound was the rain easing off the roof. The security monitors were dead. The register book lay open. At the bottom of the page, fresh ink, Night Clerk, room 13. In the hall she counted doors, 10, 11, 12, 14, no 13 at all, yet water pooled beneath a stretch of blank wall. Behind it, she could hear low humming, someone stacking keys on a counter. "Welcome to Hollow Rest Motel," and the sign outside kept flickering vacancy, over and over, like a heartbeat that didn't want to stop. The one under the bed. Mara had slept in this bed since childhood, same hollow in the mattress, same sharp creak halfway down. Every visit home meant one more night in it, surrounded by wallpaper that smelled faintly of dust and soap. Rain whispered outside as she turned off the lamp. At 2:09 a.m., something brushed her foot through the blanket, cold, deliberate. Then came a low exhale beneath the frame, matching her own. She lay frozen until dawn light seeped through the blinds. Morning reset everything. The noise of the kettle, her mother's voice, the safety of day. When she bent to tie her shoes, she caught a metallic scent, like coins. Dust gathered under the bed, darker than the light should allow. Broom smiled to Dion. She poked beneath with the broom handle. Something damp clung to the bristles. That night the weather turned again. Mara woke to gentle tapping at the floorboards. Each tap came a heartbeat after her own. Then a whisper, "You're safe. I'm still here." Her throat locked. "Stop," she whispered, voice almost kind by instinct. The whisper drifted back up, patient. "I never stop." Sleep dragged her under. She dreamed of being small, leaning toward the same shadows, her child voice whispering, "Please don't let them take me." The answer had come from the floor. "Never." Thunder snapped her awake. Her hand hung off the bed, thin air brushing her fingers, then the unmistakable hold of another hand. Gentle, wrong. She jerked free. Nothing but darkness stared back. By the third night she brought a flashlight. Kneeling, she ran the beam beneath the bed. Dust, boxes, the edge of an old toy chest, nothing more. Still, the space looked bottomless. She said quietly, "I know you're there. In the dark, you used to talk to me. I was a kid. You needed me then." She felt the memory of that comfort tighten across her chest. Her mother's stories came back, how she talked for hours to someone invisible under the bed. Imaginary friend, her mother had called it. Now the sheet drew taut across her ankles, tugging once before falling still. The voice rose again, softer. "I kept you safe. I never hurt you." Mara whispered. "Safe from what?" The wood under her lifted, breath moving through the boards. Everything outside, it said. Her palms were slick, cold air pulsing against her arms. Only one thing to do, ignore it. Pretend belief couldn't resurrect it. When morning came, her phone showed a new audio file titled Night 3. Playback. Her sleeping breath, followed by a second voice, whispering close to the mic. "They always leave too soon." I could still pull her under. The file ended with her own name, spoken carefully, testing it, still trying the sound of her. She left later that day, suitcase half packed. Her mother asked nothing. That night in her apartment, Mara unpacked, setting old habits aside. Lamplight, earbuds, shoes under the bed. A new bed, she told herself. New space, new silence. She fell asleep fast, until 3:11 a.m., when the floor beneath her sighed and shifted. She opened her eyes. The air smelled again of iron. The whisper came from inches away. "Told you I could follow." Her lamp popped when she touched it, bulb dead. A shape rose below her shadow, unfolding quietly. "You don't need to be afraid," it said. "That's my work." The mattress lifted 1 inch under her back. Her phone brightened by itself. Across the locked screen, words typed line by line. "You're still mine." Her chest ached with the pressure of a held scream. She leaned toward the darkness before she could stop herself. Past the mattress edge, 2 eyes glowed faint beneath the slats, black reflecting silver. They blinked upside down. "I'm not yours," she whispered. The voice coiled around her heartbeat. "But who protected you until now? Let me keep you where time can't find you." The floor flexed. Cold air pulled her downward inch by inch. Her fingers clawed the quilt. Wood splintered, then gave way. For one breath she was held, warm, weightless, as though remembering an embrace from some earlier life. Then the world folded closed. Morning light spilled through still curtains. The bed was smooth, corners tucked, not a wrinkle left. A single dusty handprint marked the underside of the frame. Her phone kept recording. When police played it later, they heard quiet breathing for several minutes, then a whisper, unhurried, steady. "Sleep now." She needed rest, I'll keep watch for both of us. The broadcast. Ellen saw the television her first night in the rental house. A heavy cabinet model from the 1970s, all knobs and wood veneer. She hadn't ordered it. No friends, no previous tenant left note. She left it unplugged. Even dark, it felt aware. At midnight she passed it carrying boxes and, for an instant, swore the screen reflected her a half-second late. Daylight made everything harmless. Still, the black glass caught her eye. The deeper she looked, the more it felt alive, like the start of a tunnel you shouldn't climb into. That night she plugged it in just to see. Light flared, snow filled the screen. Then a voice spoke through the hiss. "Good evening, Ellen." Her name froze her. No antenna, no cable, no possible signal. The static sharpened into a man behind a desk, smiling like a local news anchor. "Welcome home," he said. "How's the basement?" She spun the dial. Every channel showed him. When she switched the set off, the glass stayed faintly lit. At 2 a.m., light flickered down the hall. The TV had turned itself back on. "Don't be afraid this time," the voice said. "You always leave too soon." Her chest fluttered with a rush of old fear she couldn't name. She unplugged the cord, wrapped it tight around the base. When she came home from work, the set glowed again. The plug lay neatly beside it. The anchor still waited, hands folded. "Televisions don't just receive," he said. "They send when someone listens back." A live image replaced him. Ellen on her couch, staring at her own reflection. Her on-screen double smiled first. She pulled the cord again and backed out of the room. That night she dreamed in static, needles of white noise pressed against her skin. She woke to the faint spin of a dial. The TV cycled across dead channels until his face returned, closer to the camera now. "You can't move me to the basement again," he said. "It's too dark for both of us." She hadn't told anyone about storing him in a basement in her previous house. The next day she covered every mirror. Still, she felt caught in reflections, not light but attention, circling. That night every lamp shuddered and dimmed at once. From the black screen came a whisper. "You keep staring into things that stare back." Terror rode under her ribs, sharp as cold wire. The floor beneath her feet trembled with faint vibration. The air smelled of burned dust and ozone. She dragged the TV downstairs, cable dangling, set it in a corner of the basement. When she turned to leave, blue light rippled across the concrete floor. The anchor filled the screen again, eyes darker now. "Every signal finds a host," he said. "Call this one home." The camera slowly panned past him, showing a second figure seated in shadow, her outline motionless, hands folded exactly like his. She slammed the stair door and ran upstairs. Upstairs lamp, buzzing and short circuit, 10-second. Electric smell reached her first, then silence. On the wall, faint blue shimmer leaked up through the floorboards. Words vibrated faintly inside her head rather than her ears. "We're almost live." She crouched, pressed a palm to the wood. Cold glass pulsed underneath. Tens shaking but pulled like tide. Static lit her face silver. The anchor leaned forward, whisper now grainy but eager. "You already learned how to listen. Step closer, let the camera catch you for once." Ellen's pulse filled her mouth, metallic taste, heartbeat in her fingers. She touched the glass. It was cold enough to sting, yet soft beneath her skin. "There," he said, "now we can begin transmission." The light flared white. The television swallowed reflection, dissolving both figures in its glow. Upstairs, the storm faded, lamps steadied, everything clean again. 2 weeks later, the landlord entered to check a missed payment. The rooms were perfectly arranged, no dust, no dishes, curtains drawn. In the basement, the television hummed on mute, picture frozen on a smiling anchor at his desk, gentle static and dripping water. When he tapped the glass, the image wavered. Then the anchor spoke once, directly toward the lens. "Good evening. Our top story. A new tenant has joined our broadcast family. She'll be with us nightly, same time." He looked straight through the glass, eyes too steady to be pixels. If you're still watching, it's already listening. The empty field. The field used to grow corn. Now it was only grey stalks rattling under a washed-out sky. John walked the rows at sunrise, shovel balanced across his shoulder. Each step set the earth quivering, as if the ground still remembered pulse and breath. He'd stopped thinking about destinations. He just walked until something shifted. On the ridge they waited, 6 shapes, human once, rooted where they'd fallen. The locals used to call them the returned. They didn't decay, they didn't move. They stood watch, faces turned toward whatever breeze still reached this place. John circled them, as always. Same path, same silent count. Routine meant control. He crouched by the nearest body, a woman in a faded uniform, eyes clouded but whole, rain collected in her palms. The tag on her pocket read E. Cole. He wrote it in the small notebook he carried. The words steadied his hands even when nothing else did. Evenings he buried one of them, one a day. That was the rule that kept the balance, or so he told himself. He dug until sweat turned to chills. While he worked, the air thickened, the hush that came before weather or something worse. Across the field another figure had appeared. At first he thought it was one he hadn't noticed. Then it shifted, angling its head toward him, too smooth, too alive, short and dirt. John raised the shovel. "You stay there." The figure's arm twitched, skin stretching like damp paper. It staggered forward 1 pace, ankles dragging through mud. Its voice came out broken, each word a breath scraped raw. "John." He froze. He heard his wife's voice, or something close enough to break him in half, knelt in the dark until exhaustion pulled him under. Morning showed the field unchanged, except for the count. 7 bodies now, their arrangement perfect, the new one smaller than the rest. "No," he whispered. The word felt useless, like trying to hold smoke. He buried the 7th at noon. He didn't mark the grave. The day dimmed fast. John sat beside the open trench, hands raw, listening to the stillness beyond the rows. None of the returned breathed, but something beneath the surface did, a low tremor that climbed up through his knees. He whispered to the ground, "I'm helping you." A child's voice answered from nowhere and everywhere. "You are one of us." His heart lurched. Not yet. The earth at his feet exhaled a faint heat. For the first time, the bodies turned their heads. A slow, creaking motion, every face aligned with his. "Please," he said, though he didn't know what he wanted. The nearest one blinked, eyes full of color now, darker than blood. "You keep planting us," it said. "Why not rest with your crop?" It wasn't a surge. It was patient, circular, like hundreds standing up together after a long prayer. John stepped backward. The wind, or what passed for it, carried a smell of iron and rain. He realized it wasn't weather. It was them, breathing as one. He dropped the shovel. "Tell me what you want. We want the keeper to stop keeping." They moved closer without footsteps, sliding soundlessly across the mud. One touched his shoulder, light, steady, the way you might wake someone gently. Cold climbed into his bones, not painful, strangely grounding. "I'm so tired," he said. "Then rest. We'll stand for you, as you stood for us." He knelt. The wet soil welcomed him like breath drawn home. By dawn the storm line had passed. The field lay quiet, under a colorless sky. From the ridge, 7 figures had become 8, a man among them, shovel upright in his hands, eyes half open, watching the horizon for weather that would never change. Thanks for listening with me. If you enjoyed these, drop a like, subscribe for more quiet horror every week, and turn on notifications.